Really, the story's been around a while. So whoever tries to preserve their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life will preserve it. I tell you, on that night, 2 people will be in the same bed. One will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding grain together. One will be taken and the other left. Now, they heard this text a lot growing up about the rapture. 2 people are going to be in bed. One's going to be taken, one's left. That's actually not what this is about at all. This is a story that what Jesus is talking about here isn't about the end of time either. He's talking about the end of the world, but not the end of our world. He's talking about the end of the world for his listeners then and there. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. The first Christians understood the destruction of the temple, rightly or wrongly. They understood the destruction of the temple as judgment. We rejected Jesus. We rejected the path of Jesus. And as a result, we ended up being destroyed. That's how they understood it. They were still Jewish. This is what they thought. Jesus had a path for us, a path that would have led away from this. And instead, we have taken the other path, and we've been destroyed. And so for them, when the temple is torn down, it is the day that the Son of Man is revealed. It reveals that Jesus was right. Right about what? You guys ask the best questions. We're going to answer that one too. Like, right about what? Notice what happens in Luke 19. Jesus, it's Palm Sunday. He's riding into the city of Jerusalem. As Jesus came to the city and observed it, he wept over it. He said, if only you knew on this of all days the things that lead to peace. If only you knew on this of all days the things that lead to peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. The time will come when your enemies will build fortifications around you, encircle you, and attack you from all sides. They will crush you completely, you and the people within you. They won't leave one stone on top of another within you because you didn't recognize the time of your gracious visit from God. If you only knew what would bring peace. What is Jesus talking about? In the time Jesus lived, there were wars and rumors of war. There were rumblings of revolution. You had a faction within Judaism who believed that the only way that they could get rid of Rome was to take up arms. They later became called zealots. In Jesus' day, they were called the Sicarii, which means essentially men of daggers. They would go into a crowd wearing a cloak. They would find a Roman soldier at a busy area. They would come and they would essentially shank him and kill him, and then they would just slip back into the crowd and blend in. They were doing this sort of guerrilla warfare a lot. And Jesus had some of his own disciples who were known as zealots. They were known to sort of have these inklings. When Jesus gets arrested in the garden, what's the first thing that Peter does? Pulls out a sword and starts hacking, right? And what does Jesus say? Put the sword away. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. I think Jesus references this story about Noah and a flood in order to tell his people, the people listening to him, the result of not listening to him. And when I say listening to him, Jesus is teaching his followers how to resist the empire without becoming like the empire. That's the hard thing, right? Have you ever been in a discussion with somebody and you totally agreed with their point, but they made the point so badly and hatefully that you wanted nothing to do with them? Right? Like, you agree with the premise and you're like, don't know you. Right? So I think part of what Jesus is saying is like, I totally agree with you. We need peace. But the way you're going about it is going to bring a flood of violence. And it's going to destroy everything that you hold dear. In the same way that the violence of humanity brought a flood in Noah's day, the same way the violence of our people will bring a flood in our day. We talked last week about Babylon destroying the temple and exiling the people in 587 BC. In 70 AD CE, in 70, the Romans came in and did everything Jesus talked about. They built up siege works. They starved the people out. They broke through the wall. They destroyed the city. The only thing left now is a portion of the western wall. Every stone was torn down. And Jesus would say it's because in 66, they started a revolution. They started killing. And they lived by the sword, and they died by the sword. And Jesus said, it's going to catch you. And I think for us, we have to say, if we think our addiction as a species to violence isn't going to come back and bite us, if we think that revenge is the only way to live in the world and that we have to get even with those people and with them who have hurt us or gossiped or done whatever, as long as we live by revenge and retaliation, we are in danger as a species of being overtaken in a flood of our own making. Right? As a species, we have continually done two things. We've created some really beautiful, helpful things that have brought health and wholeness and wellness, right? I mean, if you could think about modern medicine and where it is and where it's going, we have the ability to heal now in ways that we never did before. And we also keep inventing more and more weapons that could destroy all life on this planet with just a flip of a switch. It seems like we're being offered a couple different paths, doesn't it? This is the Arch of Titus in Rome. After Titus, who was the general who took care of the destruction of Jerusalem, he later became the emperor, the Caesar. If you look on the picture there on the arch, this is the sacking of Jerusalem, and these are temple artifacts that the Romans carried off with them when they left the temple in a heap. And I think Jesus would say today, if we were to write in to our world, if only you knew on this of all days the things that lead to peace. And I think this has two implications. One, I think it's sort of political. And what I mean by political is politics are about how we live together in the world. So as a species, we have to be smarter about how we live together, right? If we keep threatening each other, like, it's just going to get bad. But I don't know how many of you are actually in control of that. How many of you are in control of that? Okay, we got to change the things we can control. And you can make phone calls and you can tell people to act better and we can do all that. But what can you do today to make sure this doesn't happen to us? I think we have to talk about the personal. Personally, how am I living and engaging in the world? Personally, how am I propping up violence? How am I propping and think of it like this. I'll just be honest with you. When people say bad things about me, my first thing is not, well, that's just their opinion. I have other thoughts. I won't share them now. That's between me and my therapist. I'm not paying you. But my general posture toward people who are mean to me is to act like I don't care, but really deep down to think, I just wish I could get them in a room and tell them exactly what I think about them, because I got some thoughts too. Right? And as long as we give into that sort of thing, as long as we respond to gossip with more gossip, as long as we respond to hate with more hate, even if you have a better perspective, if you're doing it hatefully, you're wrong. Right? As long as we keep this sort of ping pong of revenge going back and forth in the world where you hurt me, so I hurt you, and an eye for an eye, it's in the Bible. I've actually heard people say this. Eye for an eye, it's in the Bible. Yeah, but Jesus actually said no. Jesus actually said, not an eye for an eye. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. I hear lots and lots of Christians, especially in our country, which is like the most free country in the world when it comes to religion, complaining about being persecuted. Jesus said you should be happy. Right? And so I think as long as we keep this sort of, and I have a friend who I taught with at Western, and we did our master's degree together, and she talked about rhetorical violence. And here's what she meant, that we create the potential for violence just in the words we say that are hateful and violent, right? So, like when you read the Psalms, for example, there's this psalm about the exile that begins, by the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept, and it ends with, happy are those who take your infant children and throw them against the rocks. In the Bible. Generally a beautiful psalm, and at the end it's like, whoa. Right? And so, but that creates the potential for violence, right? When you say violent things, it creates a new potential for violence. What if we thought about in our speech and in the way we respond to people? I mean, wouldn't it be interesting to say to somebody who's hurt you, not, I know you are, but what am I? Or I'm rubber and you're glue. Don't act like you haven't thought that before with somebody as an adult. You've thought it. You just don't want to say it because you know it's embarrassing. But what if we actually said to each other, I don't know what you meant by that, but those words were really painful for me. Like, what if we use our words? And what if we communicate it? And what if we stop this belief that we can kill our way to peace, or we can kill our way to freedom, or we can kill our way to a good world? What if we actually began to believe that the only way the world will be transformed, that the only way healing will happen, that the only way we don't see a flood of violence and chaos descend on all of us? What if the only way we do that is we intentionally seek to take Jesus so seriously that we do what Jesus said? I know that's a novel idea, but what if we actually took Jesus seriously and tried to love our enemies and tried to find a way forward that doesn't just end with us getting rid of everybody who's not like us? What if Jesus rides into Jerusalem saying, if you only knew what would bring for peace, and he dies a violent, bloody death. And in that violent, bloody death, he responds to those executing him with this prayer: Father, forgive them. They don't get it. And in some ways, they really do get it. They're just getting rid of one more would-be Messiah. But they really don't get it. They really don't get it. The question is, will we? We have 2,000 years of hindsight behind us. Will we learn? Will we do it differently? Will we leave a different world behind for our children? Will we follow this path of Jesus? Which is sure is difficult, but it actually is the thing that could change the world. Are you with me? Okay, let's pray, and we're going to sing one more song today. God, as we think through this story, as we think through, specifically for us as Jesus people, as we think through what Jesus does with this story, may we feel this call as a species, as humanity, toward a more just and generous world that doesn't solve its problems with violence. May we be willing to leave behind conceptions of God that seem to support that and embrace the God revealed in Jesus. And in all the personal ways that we have, all the personal opportunities we have to choose revenge, to choose hate, to choose to be mean-spirited, to choose to wound those around us with our words or actions, give us the courage to choose forgiveness. Give us the courage to not seek to keep the revenge cycle going, but instead to disrupt it. Give us the courage to wonder what it might mean to love our enemies. Give us the courage to follow the path of Jesus, even when it's difficult, even when it looks like a cross. And if we, one by one, if we as a community, if other communities, if we join together and begin to live this way in the world, I just believe it would change. So in our prayer that you would change the world, let us also add, may it begin with us. We're grateful for this Jesus who gives us an example. May we follow it. We ask this in the name of Jesus. And everybody said, amen. Let's stand together.